Understood.
By the Guardians. That was quite the journey, wasn't it? Wonderful place you found yourself here, Corporal. Wonderful.
Glad you like it. Did you have a look at the city's defense mechanisms yet? They might interest you.
Yes, actually I have. They are part of why I find this city so intriguing. I mean, I always knew the Shapers had some interesting weaponry, but this, it's amazing. I still don't understand why the Crown never showed much interest in these ruins in the first place. Anyway, I don't want to steal more of your precious time. As promised, I'll help you improve your siege machinery, catapults, ballistas, and the like. Though of course that'll cost you a little. Not for me, but for the material.
All right. I'll come by when I need something.
Yes, Sahar? Looking for a skilled engineer?
Come take a look. I'm sure I've got something that might spark your interest. Pleasure doing business with you. Come again. I'm getting new wares by the next moon's turn.
Yes, Sahar? Looking for a skilled engineer?
Everything for the wary traveler. Good choice. Yes, come closer. I'm sure I have just what you need. Farewell.
Interesting.
So, back on your feet again, aren't you? Good, because there's plenty of work ahead of us. Do you think you can handle it? Leading the troops, I mean?
Yeah, I can.
Good. At least all that explains why your aura has always felt so strange. You're not human. At least not entirely.
Well, my Shaper blood obviously doesn't show. I don't really feel any different than other humans do.
How do you know? You ever been one? Either way, we'll find a way to get your mother back. What that fucking bastard did will not go unpunished. Trust me on that.
So I guess that means you're staying.
Yeah, you guessed right. At least for now. You're not the only one with an interest in seeing the purity of light have their fucking stakes shoved up their own asses. Now we should probably get back to planning. There's plenty of things we need to do if we want to get Greyfell back from that fanatic.
Right. See you around then.
You will. Huh?
I'm still wondering what made you leave Kalea and travel the world to study demonology.
You're not letting this one go, are you? Alright, if your life depends on it, I'll tell you. To make it short, I grew up in the slums of Kalea. A shithole if ever there was one. Just imagine an entire quarter made up of half-ruined shacks with the smell of shit and piss everywhere, and way too many people. Then add the tropical heat to it, and you've got the place I grew up in. My father had left right after I was born. My mother is what you call a day laborer, though the days when she wasn't laboring outweighed the ones when she did. Whatever job there was, she took it. Even if it was cleaning the shit out of Kalaean canals. She worked hard, but it just wasn't enough. We lived in a windowless room, and I shared a bed with my mother for the first 14 years of my life. Long story short, after a while my mother simply couldn't cover the expenses anymore. The rent for our room went up and jobs became less and less, since the mage wars in Northander also affected the trade in Kalea. So my mother looked for someone to help her out, and found one. A man named Creo. He was a loan shark who had it all. A stupid name and a shady beard. 2 lackeys who followed him wherever he went. And above all, a complete lack of what other people will call decency.
I think I can see where this is going.
Sure you can. It's not the most unique of stories, is it? To cut to the chase, 1 year later we were in massive debt. Creo suggested my mother another way of making up for it. You can fill in the blanks. I was just too weak. Over and over this fucking bastard came. Had my mother tell me to go for a walk. And every time I had no choice but to obey. Do you have any idea how it feels, Tahar? To be that powerless? I remember one day I looked in the mirror and realized how much I hated the boy I saw. I hated his body with all its frail bones, his small arms, his bloodshot wet eyes. And that's when I decided to change things. So the next time he came, I fought back.
How did that go?
What do you think? He beat me up. It was the same next time and the time after that. At first he found it funny. But after the 4th time he threatened to kill me. The only thing that stopped him from doing it is because my mother begged him to. And I had only made it worse. On my 14th name day I left home and joined up with the Kalaean sand prowlers. My mother begged me not to go. But I just couldn't. Standing there and watching this fucking bastard walk into our room again and again whenever he felt like it, I just couldn't. Dying would have been better than staying. The way I figured it was that if I earned enough money to pay Mother's debts, Creo would leave her alone. Once I was strong enough, I'd come back. Wait for him to show up again. And then, well, you can imagine the rest.
I think I can. So who were these sand prowlers?
A group of mercenaries. They took me in and trained me. But even though they were skeptical at first, they quickly realized that my determination made up for what my body was lacking. When I was 16 and I discovered my magic, one of their leaders made me his apprentice. The arcane universities are a shithole made up of boy-loving old geezers who care more about how you wear your hair than about your magic. I'll tell you the real thing. And that she did.
What about your plan to pay your mother's debts? Did that work out?
Well, I thought so at first, but we'll get there.
What was it like to work with the sand prowlers?
Well, if you were hoping for stories of sex, adventure, and intrigue, I have to disappoint you. Most of it was nasty stuff. Fighting in wars which you knew were wrong. Beating up people who were practically helpless. But then again, the Kalaean Guard was no better than that. It was a case of pick your poison.
Was that sand prowler mage also who introduced you to demonology?
What? No, she was a mediocre mage at best. The most powerful thing she could do was lighting someone's hair on fire. Though of course she didn't see it that way. After 1 year I was already stronger than her, and I started my own studies.
Huh. So did you ever return to your mother?
Of course. on my 18th name day. I had wanted to return earlier, but a contract had me kept overseas for a lot longer than I had expected. Sorry. It's strange to talk about it.
What happened?
My mother. She was gone. Her room had been cleared out, and the neighbors told me she passed away unexpectedly just 3 weeks before I arrived. Her heart just stopped beating.
I'm sorry.
Why? It was a natural death. She was old when she gave birth to me, and the life on the Chilean streets isn't forgiving. In other words, it was bound to happen. I went into the room and looked for our stash. A small casket under the floorboards. I found it, opened it, and saw all the money I'd sent her over the years.
So...
She never used it to pay Creo as I instructed her. I have no idea why, but my best guess is that she thought it was mine since I earned it. She was that kind of person, you know? No matter how hard fate punched her in the face, she clung on to her ideals. Always did what was right rather than what was good for herself. And look what she got in return.
Did you ever visit her grave?
I did, but it was a mass grave. Dozens of corpses, all piled onto each other, and some earth shoveled on top of it. I threw up when I saw it, and never came back after that.
What about Creo?
Well, as you can imagine, I went to look for him. Right after I was able to think straight again. But he was gone.
Where?
I don't know. I asked everywhere and everyone who could know, and they either didn't or gave me different information. After a while, I gave up.
Why?
Because people like Creo are just a reality we have to deal with. I could have killed him, but what good would it have done? My mother was dead, and no amount of bloodshed and gut tearing could have changed that. The world doesn't give a fuck about your ideals, Tahar. About doing the right thing. That's just the shit we tell ourselves to help us sleep at night. You eat or you get eaten. It's that simple. I wasn't strong enough when I should have been. And that's why I couldn't help her. That will never happen again.
I see where you're coming from, but without ideals, we'd be living in the claws of Nor.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that. To wrap up the story, I enrolled at the university from the money my mother saved for me. Turned out the Sand Prowler mage was wrong. There were some boy-loving professors, but they knew their shit. I studied and practiced until there was nothing left to study. Then I found out about demonology and the power in it. I quit university, and I've been traveling ever since. Taking jobs as a mercenary here and there, but above all, improving my skills. My last stop was Bargagora to summon a devourer.
Huh. And what are you after, in the long run?
I don't know. I'll find out when I get there.
Huh. Interesting story. Thanks for your trust, Uran.
Sure. Hope you're happy.
Yes, Corporal? How can I help?
About you being an assassin. You said that you might be willing to tell me more about that at another time. How about now?
I'm still not certain. The question really is, do you want to know? It might change something.
Such as?
Your perception of me. It is your choice.
Well, I wouldn't have asked otherwise. Tell me.
All right. Where should I begin? Do you remember what I told you about that man who bought me from the Greyfell Bazaar? My owner? I also told you that after an incident, he discovered my talents and made me an assassin.
I remember. But what does that have to do with your morality?
It's complicated. Just listen and you might understand. The incident took place at a festivity. A lot of highly influential people were there, servants of the crown, wealthy merchants, nobles. My master knew all of Greyfell's elites. As always, at these festivities, it was my and the other slaves' responsibility to ensure the guests' well-being. It must have been close to midnight when a man took me into his chambers. I'd learned to play along years ago, because resisting only made it worse. This time, however, was different. For some reason, that man wanted me to tell him that I loved him. I did, but he kept on telling me that I should say it like I really mean it. When I couldn't, he got angrier and angrier and started choking me. I had almost lost consciousness when I felt something break. I don't know how else to put it. It was as if my mind simply cracked open, like a crystal ball smashed against a mirror. And all of a sudden, that man and I weren't separate entities anymore.
I don't follow.
My magic, my dreamweavery, that's when it broke free. You probably don't know this, but the only way to become a dreamweaver is by shattering your mind. You are opening yourself to the thoughts and emotions of others, but you lose your own.
Wait, dreamweavers don't feel and think?
No, we do. But it's differently than normal people. Me. The Iane you're talking with is the result of long work and studying of human behavior. I know how to blend in, to seem like I'm just like you. But the world inside my head is an entirely different one. Again, it is almost impossible to put into words if you're not a dreamweaver yourself.
What happened to the man?
I killed him. It wasn't a conscious choice, looking back. I even think that shattering my mind was my body's way of ensuring survival. I closed my eyes, reached out for the man's mind, and just crushed it. The man gasped, lost balance, and fell right off the bed. He wasn't dead yet, but unable to move. Like a puppet rid of its strings. At first I was disoriented. But then I felt it, for the first time. The urge.
To kill him?
Yes. To massacre him. Hear his screams. To see his life taken by my hand. I grabbed a lantern that was standing on a bedside table and knelt over him, and... well, you can picture the rest. To get back to your original question, that urge, it stuck with me. I think that the moment when my mind shattered and I became a dreamweaver was what unlocked it. Ever since then, I've found violence and bloodshed to be ecstatic, erotic even. And when I kill someone, like I killed that man, I feel alive. Actually, it's one of the few times I am capable of feeling anything at all.
Huh. This is why you became an assassin?
Yes. My master introduced me into the craft. Probably because he knew that my dreamweavery had changed me. I wasn't just a slave child anymore. I was a weapon now. More than that, even. I needed what these new tasks my master sent me on provided me with. It had become a basic need of mine. Of course, I briefly considered changing my profession after my master had his accident. But I didn't. Killing is something I need, as much as a child needs the love of his mother. If I don't feed my urge, I will die. Not physically, but mentally. I just know this.
Well, it was definitely not what I was expecting.
I can imagine.
But is there no way to cure you? To return your mind to its original state?
No, there isn't. The Fennomir have experimented a lot with reversing a dreamweaver's mind to what it was before he became one. And all their test subjects died.
What about your victims? Don't you ever feel guilt?
Once again, Tahar, I do not feel emotions the way you do. Of course I wonder if I made a mistake, but my reflections are purely based on theory. But then again, I don't accept just any contract. The way Leonidas described you, you are a monster in human disguise. And that's the first principle I try to live by. Criminals first. The second one is never kill a mother or a child, regardless of the pay.
What? No children? How noble.
There's no need for sarcasm. I know that my restrictions may seem ridiculous to you.
Well, but what if you're wrong? If you kill an innocent?
That has happened before, and it will happen again. You see, I do not consider myself some kind of vigilante, some kind of judge. Ultimately, I know that I am what society would call a murderer, and that I do what I do for myself, above all else.
That's a lot to take in.
I know. Now, tell me, Tahar, do you regret asking me this question? Knowing all this, do you think I'm a monster?
I don't think you're a monster, no. But I can't understand how you can choose to give in.
As I said, it's a matter of survival. But I understand why you would feel this way. Anyway, I would like some time for myself now. I hope you understand.
Yes.
Yes? What is it?
So, Undergast, when you told me about your split with Lena, I got the feeling that you were more than just colleagues.
You are asking if we were in love. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Then let me start by telling you that the term love is undefined and that theories about it conflict one another. I have read a lot of books on it, and I've studied the poems, and I've come to the conclusion that it is ultimately a primitive, carnal urge that people have come to romanticize for the emotions that come with it. I, myself, never felt it, and maybe that was because I saw the underlying mechanisms. I always found it strange how people overreact so strongly to such a simple emotion, and maybe that very fact stopped me from being able to feel these emotions at all.
Well, what are the underlying mechanisms?
The desire to reproduce with a fitting mate. In fact, the orcs have a very dry, rational view on this process, but for some reason humans, dwarves, and elves do not.
Love is more than just that.
Well, most people would agree with you, and I'm certain that in your subjective experience it is.
So, what you're saying is that you were never able to feel love, but then Lena came along and you did.
No, it was not that simple. What stood out in our relationship was that we connected. I've never felt that before. You see, Tahar, to me, the bonds people have always felt peculiar. And I am not like Yana. Her mind simply does not have the ability to feel these bonds anymore. She had them once, but then she lost them, as she became a dreamweaver. My brain is capable of feeling these things, but I am unable to connect with the outside world. I only have my own mind as a frame of reference. For example, when a person tells you yes, whereas he or she means no, you might be able to feel this discrepancy because you're able to empathize with her. I can't. To me, this person's distress would make no sense whatsoever. But then there was Lena. For some bizarre reason, she understood me and I understood her. Or at least, I thought that I did. It was as if this barrier, this shell that separates my mind from others, was pervious to her emotions. I know how strange it sounds, and I also have no explanation for why this was, yet it changed me. All at once, I felt connected. Do you know this feeling, Tahar? You have traveled with these people for quite some time now. Is there anyone you were, well, fond of?
Well, yes, there is.
I see. Then you probably know how distracting such a feeling can be. To be honest, when I first became aware of that bond between Lena and me, I was horrified. I could not focus anymore. When I sat down to write my studies, I realized after hours that none of what I had written made sense at all.
Your inability to relate to others, is it innate?
Yes. If it were not, I might have considered my sudden connection to Lena as a symbol of overcoming. But it was not. Even though I felt connected to Lena, I was still unable to feel the same way towards others. This is what deeply confused me.
What did Lena make of all that?
Nothing. Unlike me, she did not try to analyze, to understand its origin. At the same time, she did not discourage me from pondering. I believe this is what made our relationship unique. Complete acceptance. She did not try to tell me how I should behave or feel, and neither did I. Even when she decided to leave the guild and I decided to stay behind, we both accepted each other's decisions.
I see. Am I right to assume that your relationship ended with your disagreement over the Creators Guild abandoning its neutrality?
No, you misunderstand. We never had a relationship. Although the feelings were mutual and we, acted on them, we never felt the need to bind ourselves to some close-minded societal construct. But yes, you are correct. It was the disagreement that broke our bond. Quietly, she left and never returned again.
Do you feel, I don't know, betrayed?
Betrayed? No. By betrayal, people usually mean when someone behaves contrary to what they agreed on, or more often than not, as they would like that person to behave. I always found the word to be very misleading. Desires, wishes, and urges are natural things, and I always found the usage of such heavily judgmental words to be very childish. Lena did what she thought was right, and so did I. I have not and will never blame her for that.
What, so you didn't even argue? I have a hard time imagining that.
As I said, acceptance of one another's nature and decisions was a pivotal element in our interactions, though I did notice that my unwillingness to follow her on her mission caused her more emotional distress than she usually would have felt. You see, if there ever was a disharmony between us, it was when she tried to encourage me to embrace the world, as she put it. She told me that both I as a person and my studies would benefit from more first-hand experience.
Such as?
Well, anything. Traveling, studying the Tsarlanthep ruins first-handed, even visiting the city of Everlight every once in a while. She seemed to think that it could help me get a better understanding of the world. But again, she never tried to force me. I could tell that my unwillingness upset her, but like always, she showed acceptance.
And you have no idea where she and the others are?
I don't. I have heard rumors that they were helping mages in Leonider, but that was moons ago.
How do you feel about this?
That is a good question. I still think about her, almost every day. But the more time passes, the more this entire episode starts to feel like a vague, distant dream, the way an elder must feel about youth. I do not know how I would feel if I ever saw her again.
I can imagine. Well, thank you for trusting me with this, Undergast.
You have nothing to thank me for. If this conversation helped you get a better picture of me, I'm glad we had it. But there is one more thing I would like to ask you, Tahar.
Tell me.
Do you have regrets? Do you ever feel as if you could and should have acted differently than you did act?
Everybody has regrets.
That seems like a deliberately vague answer. It could indicate that you do have regrets, but it could also indicate that you do not have them. But I understand. If you do not want to share this with me, you do not have to. You see, I've never told you this, but I find your resilience to be remarkable.
How so?
Well, it is no secret that you have endured a lot of pain, especially your early childhood must have made a mark on your psyche. But still, you did not give up.
Well, I'm doing what I can.
I can see that. Either way, I think we have spent enough time talking. We should get back to the tasks at hand.
We should. So long, Undergast.
Hello?
Are you all right? You seem distraught.
I am. The mentalists have told me what happened in Aenir's Blade. The fact that you met Lena, I do not know what to make of it. I wish I had been there. Tell me, did she say anything about me? Did you even tell her that you're traveling with me?
I didn't get the chance.
I feared as much. Well, I will talk to her followers. I did already see some familiar faces in the ones you brought here. If you don't mind, I would like some time to think now. If you wish, we can talk later.
All right. What do we need? Understood. Got it. How are you holding up?
Fine, I guess. Thanks for asking. You know, Corporal, I've been meaning to ask you something.
Yes?
Well, not knowing your mother and all that shit your father put you through. Do you ever feel lost?
Why do you want to know?
Oh, I'm just wondering, I guess. So, what's your answer?
I manage.
I see. You know, I haven't told you that yet, but actually our pasts aren't so different. Save for the fact that my father didn't try to conquer the world, at least not that I know.
How are our pasts alike then?
Simply put, I also didn't know my mother. And my father was a bastard if there ever was one.
What happened to your mother?
She died giving birth to me.
I'm sorry.
It's alright. As I said, I never knew her.
I take it you and your father aren't on good terms then.
You are of great wisdom, Tahar. No, we were not. I was and still am the only heir of the family, and if there's anything my father ever cared about, it was prestige. You see, it might not be obvious, but I'm actually of noble blood. Pure blood, as Finn and Mir elves call it. Nothing impressive, small nobility. You know, similar to the kind of Nortander nobility that's always around at royal festivities, licking everyone's boots so that they just don't forget about them.
There's nobility in Finn and Mir?
Oh, yes, there is. They don't call it that, but essentially Finn and Mir is an aristocracy.
How so?
Well, as you might know, elven culture heavily revolves around the White Tree, a gift from their goddess Ellen. Simply put, the tree is revered and guarded by a group of mages, of seers, called the Council. They're the rulers of our country, 6 women and 6 men. Now, according to the ancient lore, when a seer dies, his or her successor is chosen by the Council. However, it has become custom that a seer should be replaced by someone from his bloodline. Someone pure, as they call it.
Which means they make sure that the power stays within the right families.
Indeed. And even though elven families in themselves are small, if you count all the cousins, aunts, and uncles, the members of just one council family could populate a whole township. In other words, the closer your blood ties with the council, the closer you are to the White Tree. And thus, the higher your standing.
So I assume your father put you under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I barely had a childhood. It was all stern-faced teachers instead, trying to feed me language, history, math, and magic from the day I could speak. And I can't even remember all those festivities and religious ceremonies I had to attend. It was as if I learned the meaning of the word small talk before I learned how to ask for my mother's teat. Not that she would have been around to listen.
How about friends?
Oh, that's another topic. I was allowed to go out and play as long as it was with the right people. Still, I didn't, which was my choice, really. One of the few I made in those years. I preferred to stay on my own.
How come?
I don't know. See, I've always felt a bit ahead of others. As you know, we think in other dimensions than you do. Our lives are a lot longer. What that means is that an elf who has seen 20 winters is still considered and looks like a child. Thus, behaves as such. I just never felt at home with most people. Especially around my age. And that feeling never changed.
What was your father hoping to gain from this?
Isn't it obvious? He wanted to marry me off, and thus expand our petty little family's prestige.
If he simply wanted to arrange a marriage for you, then why teach you magic, maths? When these things happen in Nortander, it's usually more about, how shall I put it?
The looks?
And the ancestry, yes.
Well, these things play a big role in Finn and Mir too, but to be considered a good match, education and magical talent are just as important. For a priest, let alone a pure blood, to be seen with an uneducated, non-gifted street elf is frowned upon, not to say forbidden. Also, from what I've learned, it's mostly young women and girls who get married off in Nortander, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, this isn't the case in Finn and Mir. If the head of a family decides to do so, a young boy or a young man may have the same fate as the one I just escaped by a hair's breadth. But this is a topic you could fill books with. Probably not for now.
But it never came to that?
Almost.
I see. Where is your father now?
Dead as a doornail. He got assassinated some years before I was allowed into the priesthood.
Assassinated? What happened?
He got mistaken for someone else. But it doesn't really matter. Let's not talk about it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, don't be. To be honest, I'm glad he's dead. Otherwise, I would be in bed next to some 200-year-old seer now. You see, Tahar, if there's one thing I took away from all that, it's that there's no greater power in life. Or, if there is, it doesn't care. Murderers live to be 100, children die in the birth beds. Ultimately, the biggest fallacy is that we like to believe that there's someone who gives a damn. We're on our own, and we have to make the best out of whatever life throws at us. I did. And even though not all worked out as I had planned, I'm here. And I'm free.
But the Guardians are real.
I never said that they weren't. But tell me one thing. Why is there cruelty when there's Shanna? Why is there injustice when there's Arian? Why do children die when there's Ellen? There are two explanations. Number one, the Guardians are far less powerful than we think. Number two, they just don't give a damn.
Or maybe we're just not meant to understand. Maybe their ways are unfathomable.
Yeah, right. Maybe it's all just unfathomable. Let's just accept that and live in ignorance, shall we? The gods aren't the answer. Yeah, every once in a while there's the token miracle healing. The chances of your prayers being answered are next to none. So you can either sit on your buttocks hoping that some god will take pity, or you can take your fate into your own hands.
But you still feel lost sometimes, don't you?
Yeah, I do. But I'm working on it. Anyway, we digressed quite a bit, didn't we? Sorry, my fault. Sometimes I just talk too much. I'll see you around, Tahar. And thanks for listening.
Now would you
Corporal? Need anything?
You never told me why you fled Finn and Mir.
Fair enough. You've given me little reason to distrust you, so... Oh well. Let's just get this over with. I already told you about my father. How to him I had always been more of an asset. Well, after my father died, I decided to become a novice.
A novice?
Someone aspiring to be a priest of Ellen. I don't know why I did it. It was something my father had always considered a backup plan if an arranged marriage wouldn't work out. Part of it was probably because obeying my father was all I knew at that time.
What does life as a priest of Ellen look like?
Boring. Though not as boring as a Nortander monk's life. You are free to have family and to indulge in the earthly pleasures. Still, your life is devoted to worship. And for a priest of Ellen, that means healing the sick and preserving Ellen's greatest gift, nature.
Was it difficult to receive the novitiate?
Not for me. First of all, I was a good candidate. I was still very young, not even in my 30s. And I already knew a great deal about magic and healing. Secondly, I was, after all, pure blood. That helped as well.
But something happened.
Yes. In my first year, I fell in love. That crazy, hot-blooded, head-over-the-heels kind of love that the bards all sing about. The boy felt the same way, and for the next year it was, well, it was perfect. It was the two of us against the world. Maybe you know that feeling.
What was his name?
Doesn't matter.
And the priests didn't mind?
Priestesses. Only women are allowed to teach. And no, they didn't. Elves consider love to be a blessing of Ellen. Forbidding it would be near absurd. I have no clue where your monks got that idea from. Though, of course, that boy and I tried to, restrain ourselves when the situation demanded it.
And I guess your romance didn't end well.
You guess right. But it was more than that. You know, I told you how I always felt estranged around other people. I knew how to put on a smile, how to make myself fit in, but it was always fake. Shallow. With him, it was different. Dramatic as it may sound, I thought I had finally found someone who understood me. Then there was the novitiate. Despite all the time I sunk into doing the crazy things lovers often do, I never failed as a student. Or, no, let's put it another way. I was the best, in every aspect.
Which didn't sit well with some people.
No. And eventually, they made sure I felt it. They excluded me from everything, stared at me when I walked by. It hurt, yes, but I convinced myself it didn't. I've always been good at that.
Did it take a toll on your relationship with that boy?
More than that. My lover's friends started manipulating him. Telling him that I only saw him as my pet, that he was a failure, and that I only kept him around to feel good about myself.
That's toxic.
It was. And their seeds met fertile ground. You see, we novices all knew that only 4 out of 20 will be granted priesthood at the end of our training. And being a failed novice leaves you with a mark you'll keep for the rest of your life. It all looked peaceful on the surface, but beneath that it was an arena. And these other novices, they made sure my friend became aware of that fact. To him, I started being a rival as well. And do you want to know the biggest joke of it all? I didn't see it. The idea that, I don't know, that he would listen to them. That he would ever reach a point where he'd put what we had below his hurt pride and his fears. It never crossed my mind.
So what happened?
Well, he knew I was curious by nature, so one night when we were in bed together, he suddenly asked me if I wanted to go on an adventure. Of course I said yes. So we snuck out into the cloister's courtyard. It was beautiful. The night was cloudless, and the old oak, our cloister shrine, had just begun to bloom. We made our way to the library building, but of course the door was locked. Out of nowhere, he pulled a key, grinning at me, and opened it. It was insane. As you can imagine, priests aren't known for being lenient towards these kinds of trespassings. We were risking our novitiate, and I didn't even know the reason, but I liked it. And we were doing it together, weren't we? It was exciting. He took my hand and we went to the High Priestess's office. We opened the door and went inside, and there he finally told me what we were here for, to open the grimoire.
Grimoire?
The High Priestess's spellbook. It was a stupid idea. And if I hadn't been so blind, so bloody naive, I should have seen it by then. But I didn't.
What did he ask you to do?
To open it and try to read one of the spells. He teased me. Told me that I wouldn't be able to do it. You know? Saying it like that. It sounds so bloody stupid, doesn't it? But again, I was too blind. I laughed. I wanted to impress him, so I gave him a kiss. Opened the page and started saying the words. Long story short, I lost control. The spell was too much for me to handle and it misfired. One moment I was staring at the pages, the next one the library was aflame and my lover was gone.
I'm sorry.
Don't be. I was the one too stupid to see it coming.
How far did that fire spread?
Not far. It was put out before it could do real damage. But, of course, that was the end of novitiate. I was thrown into the cell of shame and sentenced to 12 years of polishing prayer banks and cleaning floors in the shrine.
Did you try to tell the priestesses the whole story?
No, I just sat there and smiled. Of course I did. But my love had all his friends to back him up. To them, it wasn't even a trial. It was a feast.
Your lover, did he regret it?
I think so. The only bloody gratification I ever got from this. But even if he would have confessed and begged me to take him back, I couldn't have. All that connection, that trust. It was gone. Worse, it was tainted.
But you never did polish those prayer banks, am I right?
No. In the night after the trial, they still let me sleep in my chamber. Thoughtlessness, I suppose, or maybe they simply didn't care. I got my things, left, and never came back. So, here it is, the whole truth. No dark secrets, no assassinations, no necromantic rituals. Just a plain old broken heart. Compared with all that shit you had to go through, it almost sounds ludicrous.
It doesn't. Being betrayed by someone you trust often hits the hardest.
Yeah, I guess. It's just, I don't get it. How could he give all that up? I mean, there was something between us, you know? Something rare, something precious. But no, he threw it all away for his fucking vanity. But in a way, it's just a continuation of what I've always known. Wherever I am, I'm a stranger. People don't like me, and I don't like them.
For what it's worth, I'm glad our paths crossed.
Yeah, me too, Corporal. Me too. I'd like some space now. I hope you don't mind. Let's talk later.
Corporal Tahar. Still feels strange to say that name out loud.
Because of my father?
What do you think? Anyway, you've proven by now that you're not like him. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but I'm glad our paths crossed. So, what do you need?
Can you tell me more about the Iron Falcons?
Depends.
Why did you choose to become a Falcon?
Choose? You certainly don't know anything about royalty, Tahar. There was never much choice, especially not for me and my brother. To be honest, I always dreamed of becoming the Lady Marshal at the Queen's side. But that role was reserved for Angar. Thus, my parents sent me to the Falcons. Because of my talent and my blood, it had always been clear that one day I'd lead them, if I didn't fall in battle before that could happen. And I didn't. So now, the Arendirs lead the two most powerful forces in Northander, just as our parents planned.
Makes sense. What's it like to be an Iron Falcon?
Harsh.
Meaning?
No family, no pleasures. Just the vigil and hard training under the desert sun, day after day. It's necessary because any distraction could make us drop our guard, which would mean the end of the world as we know it.
You have my respect.
Thank you.
How are you settling in?
Good. I'm worried about the tomb, of course, but I can see that my brother is right. The purity is as big a threat as the File Darg. Let us just pray that your soldiers know what they're doing.
What's your relationship with Angar?
I don't see how that's relevant. Sorry. If anything, I'm more worried about Myra. Seeing her like that, it's disquieting, to say the least. You want to know something funny? As a child, I always scolded her for her naivety. I told her she had to toughen up and that a woman of royal blood shouldn't behave like the miller's daughter, playing witch and drawing pretty pictures. Of course, she never listened. And now, all of a sudden, that naivety, that optimism, that blind faith in the world is gone. And I miss it. When this is over, we'll find a cure. We need to.
I'll be off. Will do.
Hey.
How are things? Any troubles with the Ash Reavers yet?
No, it's all good. They respect me, and they respect you. And as long as that's a given, they won't cause any trouble. Not for us, that is.
Is something on your mind, Gore? You seem, I don't know, rattled.
What do you think, Tahar?
It's about Kagan, isn't it?
Yeah. Look, Tahar, the thing with the knife. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done it. Without me, the fire wielders would have broken apart. And it would have been you and all of Io who would have paid the price. Just so I could have my personal catharsis. What I'm trying to say is, sorry. That was selfish. And it was stupid.
So it wasn't an act?
No, Tahar, it wasn't.
No need to apologize, Gore. Really.
Anyway, for what it's worth, I'm glad we didn't have to kill him. I feel relieved. At least a little. Anything else you need?
Interesting.
Tahar. Never mind.
Something on your mind?
Well, maybe. Remember when you asked me about Rain? The other gifted shaman from my tribe.
Yeah? What about it?
I want to talk about it. I'm not supposed to, but I don't know. I trust you, Tahar, and I've kept silent about this for far too long. Zarek's fangs, this is so silly. I feel like a damn child.
I'm not forcing you.
Right. Where do I start? Before becoming a shaman, every disciple has to go through a trial. The Iron Trial, as it's called. I told you that I did most of my training in solitude, didn't I? That wasn't true. 5 years after I entered disciplehood, another orc was accepted by my elder. A female named Rain. She was 2 years younger than me.
I thought only male orcs can be gifted.
No. It's just that for female orcs, it's even rarer to have magic. Which is why there are close to no female shamans.
Huh. How did you get along?
Well, at first, I was a complete dick to her. I was jealous and feared for my position. However, she never took offense by it. She fired back at me when I got childish, but at the same time never lowered herself to my level. As the years went by, we became friends. And no, there was no courting or mating involved, if that's what you're thinking. She was more like a sister to me, and one who, unlike my true kin, understood me. Those years in the Orcish steppes, they were special. I know how it sounds, but it's the truth. We spent days, weeks out in the wild, doing whatever our elder tasked us with. And though it was hard, there was beauty in that. We just had this connection between us, this trust.
Sounds like friendship to me.
Yeah, friendship. I never had a connection like that again, and I rarely talk about it. One time I did, the orc I told it to laughed right in my face. He thought it was ludicrous. A male spending time with a female who wasn't his mate. Stopped laughing when I broke his nose.
But something happened, am I right?
Yeah, the trial did. The sacred test every disciple has to take before he or she can become a shaman. Our elder sent us both at the same time, which was unusual. But of course I was relieved. There was plenty of talk about the Iron Trial. And I was scared.
How did Rain feel about it?
Same as I. Believe me, Tahar, only a fool would have entered into the trial with a smug smile on his face. We knew what was ahead of us.
What did you know about the trial?
Rumors. Shamans are forbidden to talk about it. But it was known that only half of those who take it return at all.
So what happened?
We, Zarek's fangs. I can't believe I'm telling you this. I'm breaking my oath.
For what it's worth, I'll keep silent about it, I promise.
I know you will, Tahar. Otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. We weren't told much about the trial. Only that we'd have to venture to a cave, far up in Barga Gor. They also didn't tell us how to get there. Only that Zarak would guide us. And he did. After a week of traveling, we found it. It was a strange place, Tahar. I saw that right from the beginning. The entrance looked like a mouth, the rocks surrounding it like the bones of an old forgotten beast, and the stalagmites like hundreds of teeth. But of course, we went in. We had to.
What did you find?
A giant hall. It was as mesmerizing as it was unsettling. There were murals and carvings all over the cave walls. Old glyphs that I'd never seen before.
Shaper glyphs, maybe?
No, not Shaper. They looked as if the Guardians themselves had carved them into the rock.
Interesting. What else was there?
Nothing. That's what baffled me. Apart from those murals, the hall was completely empty. And for some reason, the ground in that hall was completely smooth, like polished stone. There were braziers, one in each corner of the hall, and they were burning brightly. Rain was as confused as I was. But nonetheless, we entered the hall. And that's when the trouble began. Because all of a sudden, the exit was gone. No magical noise, nothing. Just in that moment when we looked the wrong direction, it disappeared. And instead of it, we were looking at another wall.
How is that even possible? Maybe it was an illusion.
That was our first thought too, but it wasn't. That new wall was as solid as every other rock in that hall.
Strange. What did you do?
Well, after we calmed down a little, we assessed our situation. We figured that this was the Iron Trial, and that it was our task to find another exit. So we started looking. But it was pointless. There was nothing. We couldn't even hear the wind anymore. For the next 14 days, we were trapped. We couldn't make that wall disappear, and no matter how long we studied the glyphs, how long we prayed, nothing happened. On the 5th day, our provisions had come to an end, save for half a skin of water and a handful of jerky. On the 8th day, it was all gone.
Blazes. How did you survive?
I'm getting there. As you can imagine, the thirst was the worst. It drove us mad, and we searched every corner of that goddamn hall for just a drop of water. Not that we hadn't looked before, but as you know, hope dies last. Have you ever had thirst, Tahar? Real thirst?
No.
And hope it stays that way. I'd rather bleed out on a pole than experience that again. On the 11th day, Rain and I were puking our guts out. Our skin had literally started to crack, and I felt as if I was burning from within. On the 12th day, we were only an inch from death. That's when the dream came.
A dream?
Yes, a shared dream, almost like a vision. We were still in that hall, Rain and I, but we were out of our bodies, floating like spirits. At first I thought we had died, then I saw what was different. The floor was full of blood, and that blood was burning. The murals and glyphs had started moving, twisting, like shadows dancing on a wall. That's when I first understood what they were depicting. For some reason in the real world, I'd never been able to.
What did they depict?
It showed what was expected from us. What we had to do to get out. Sorry this isn't easy. I've dreamed about those weeks ever since. But telling someone, it feels bizarre.
If this is too hard for you, we can stop.
Nonsense. I started, so I might as well finish. Zarek demanded a fight. Either one of us died by the hands of the other, or we would die there together. The Iron Trial. We were never both meant to pass.
Truth be told, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it shouldn't have surprised me either. But for some reason, I don't know. He had known Tahar, our elder, our master. He had known that it would come to this. Yet he still decided to send the two of us out at once.
So you fought each other?
No. Trial or not, I would have rather died than done that. And that's precisely what I told Rain. A god that demands a man to kill his own sister is not a god that deserves worship by anyone. But Rain wouldn't have it. She claimed that if both of us died, both of our lives would be wasted for nothing. I got angry and asked her if she meant that she wanted to fight me. She said no.
I don't understand.
She wanted me to kill her. She told me that she was already too weak to make it down the mountain anyway, but that I could still make it. Believe me, Tahar, if there had been any strength left in me, I would have punched her just for suggesting it.
Did you ever consider sacrificing yourself?
No. I know it makes me sound like a coward, and maybe that was part of the reason why I didn't. But the sane part of my mind still believed that there had to be another way. That all this was just some cruel joke, and the cave we had found maybe wasn't Zarek's after all.
And yet, you're here.
I am. I should have known before she even did it. She always had to have it her way, no matter the price. It happened when I was asleep. She took my dagger from its sheath, put it into my hand, and drove it through her throat without hesitation. When I opened my eyes, her blood was already all over my face. And as if Zarek had been watching all along, the wall disappeared. No noise, just like that. The wind was back, and it was raining outside. The first time in months. I like to think that she saw it before she died.
Did you make the descent?
I did. There were berries in a mountain goat that had been hit by a rock slide, right next to the exit. It was so absurd I almost had to laugh. When I got back to the Elder's shack, I screamed at him, then broke down and started to cry. He just listened. In the end, he told me that we had both known what had been at stake. Yet we agreed. Choice and consequence. He made me a shaman the next day.
That's cruel.
Maybe. But without cruelty, there isn't life. Don't you, too, send brothers and sisters into battle, Tahar? Children, fathers. You do it because, ultimately, you believe the outcome will lead to a world more desirable. It was the same with Rain and me. We wanted to be shamans, Zarek's chosen, and we both paid the price.
Do you blame yourself sometimes?
Of course I do. But ultimately, it was her choice, and all I can do to honor her now is to respect it.
I see.
There's one more thing. Remember when you asked me why I feel the way I do about our culture? Why I think we orcs should strive for more? It's Rain who made me realize that. Most orcs would have fought each other in that cave, to the death. But she didn't. Instead of submitting to her primal instincts, she made a sacrifice. One that I could have made too, if I hadn't been such a coward. Blazes, it feels strange to have told you all this. But, I don't regret it.
Well, thanks for trusting me with this, Gore.
Let me have some time for myself right now, all right? I need to think.
I'll be leaving now.
All right.
Now would you look at that? Understood.
To this day, the Shaper's magical and technological prowess remains unrivaled. One thing is clear.
Tahar, may I help you with something?
What exactly is it that fascinates you about the Shapers?
Oh, Tahar, that's quite a topic. I don't mind sharing, but are you sure you want to go there?
I am. Tell me.
All right. Well, where do I start? You see, the Shapers have always fascinated me. They're all over Io. These remnants of a once so glorious civilization. Yet for some reason, so many people are almost oblivious to it. On the one hand, of course, that's very sad. On the other hand, it also makes it a lot more exciting. It's like I'm a treasure hunter, only that everyone else fails to see the treasures around us. Tell me, Tahar, when seeing all of this, don't you sometimes feel like you're exploring a childhood dream? The kind of world the poets and the bards always spoke of?
The Shapers are dangerous. Just think of that Steel Guardian we fought to get in, or the Ghost Watchers. Not what I'd call a childhood dream.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't take away from the wonderment, does it? But this childish fascination was only the spark. The more I studied the Shapers, the more enthralled I became with their culture. Did you know that at the pinnacle of their existence, they ruled over all of Io? A global empire with no one to oppose them.
You seem to consider that a good thing.
Oh, good, bad, the world doesn't work like that. Of course, there are writings that hint at the fact that the Shaper Empire wasn't all rainbows and unicorns, but still it was stable. And it persisted for tens of thousands of years. Can you imagine? All this knowledge, all this art, all this wisdom. Nothing in the Io of today can match that. Nothing. It's like comparing a sea full of secrets with a puddle of muddy water.
How do you know all this?
Some of it from writings, some of it's just connecting the dots. I know how many scholars are out there at the universities giving their talks about the inscrutable empire, but it's not nearly as inscrutable as they say. Their problem is they're trying to understand the Shapers by reading books and dusty tablets. That's not how it works. You need to get out there, into the field. And even if it takes years of fruitless digging, eventually you're bound to stumble onto something. Another piece of the mosaic.
Very poetic.
Because it is.
My father always told me the Shaper Empire relied a lot on slaves.
What? No, that's rubbish. The Shapers had castes, yes, and it's probably the lower castes your father was referring to. But to call these slaves is like calling, say, a tanner who was born outside a royal family a slave, just because he'll never be a king. And even the very lowest caste, the Zalanir, always had enough to eat, a roof over their heads, and could, without paying a single coin, get themselves healed by a cleric if they needed to. So if you think that's unjust, go ahead. Ask an Everlight beggar which era he'd rather live in. He's not a slave, yes, but in some ways he's worse off.
And how exactly did their empire come to be? They must have conquered quite a few nations.
They had the liberty of being the first living civilization on our EO, at least as far as we know. That made it easier to maintain peace and stability. Until the end and the dragons.
And yet, they died out.
Yeah. Great mystery.
Most scholars think it was the dragons.
They do, but I doubt it. You saw what the Shapers were capable of. Even a race as powerful as the dragons couldn't have wiped them out. And you see the shape this city is in, Tahar. There's no traces of fire and destruction. But regardless of what it was, it doesn't change the fact that the way the current races of this world treat the Shapers is nothing short of pathetic. They were greater than we'll ever be. But instead of studying this greatness, we ignore them. And why? Just because it doesn't fit into our religion, our traditions, or whatever reason they can come up with. Because to many, admitting what a marvel the Shapers truly were would mean admitting that our culture is pale in comparison.
Is our world really that bad?
That depends on your expectations. We could do worse, certainly, but if this is as good as we can get, then I have nothing to feel but pity.
Maybe you're right. There's a lot we could learn from the Shapers.
There is. In any case, I suppose you found your answer, haven't you? This is what fascinates me about the Shapers. They're a reminder of what we could be, if only we wanted to.
I see. Well, thanks for the explanation, Iskrim. I appreciate it. I'd still like to know more about how you ended up in Nortender.
Bugger and blast. And here I was hoping you'd forgotten. Alright, I'll tell you. But only under one condition.
Yes?
That I get to ask you a personal question too.
Then we have a deal. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Fair enough. I was born in the Windwall Mountains. Sorry, still sorting out my thoughts. It's been a long time since I last told this story to anyone. Alright, one more time. As you can imagine, I was born in Windwall, a child of the rocks.
Come again?
A true dwarf, as some would say. Born in the buried city, not on the outside as the traders and farmers are. My family was quite privileged. Not nobility, but my mother and father led a big smeltery which supplied one of the finest smithies. Moon silver weaponry. Ever heard of it?
I think so. The commanders of the Royal Army used them.
Figures. Well, my childhood was a rather unremarkable one. I had 2 brothers and a sister, and even though I was the oldest child, I was always the most quiet one. I learned quickly how to wield an axe, and I still know how to do it, but I never took pleasure in it. The same goes for my parents' craft. For some reason, Nihalf had given me a talent for metallurgy, but not the desire to use it. Instead, my biggest love was always made with ink. Books.
But I assume your parents didn't approve of that.
Oh no, they didn't mind. I had 3 siblings who could do the job as well as I, so the future of our family was secured. On the contrary, they were quite accepting, which wasn't usual amongst dwarves, especially not those in Windwall.
Are the surface dwarfs different?
Depends. There are some who were very open-minded. For example, the traders who get around a lot. On the other hand, there are some who were as ignorant as the Windwallers.
Dwarves are traditionalists, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they are. They love their brawls, they love their ale, and they love their metal crafting. And they never miss a chance to tell the outside world just how much they do.
Well, to be honest, when I think of dwarven culture, that's exactly what comes to my mind.
See? And that's the problem. There's always diversity in every race. There are soft-hearted orcs, there are elves who don't give a damn about the white tree, and there are humans with... well, you get the point. What I'm trying to say is, many dwarves love living these traditions, but there are some like me who just don't fit in. This is one of the reasons why I appreciate you and this group so much, Tahar. Aenir's tools or not, We're all pariahs, in one way or another.
I guess that's true. So, what happened? Why did you leave Windwall?
I'm getting there, Tahar. When I came of age, I found work in the Windwall Library. It sounds more impressive than it is. Basically just 4 blocky granite walls filled with a dozen bookshelves. Nothing compared to the great libraries of Finn and Mere or even Everlight. That time was also when I deepened my knowledge of the Shapers. I devoured all the books there were, and bought whatever writings the merchants brought in. They smiled at me, talked of me as the strange bird, but I didn't care. The more I read, the more spellbound I became. And the more I dreamed of journeying through Io to solve all those mysteries not yet uncovered.
Are there Shaper ruins in the Windwall Mountains?
Hardly. And those that are there are buried beneath miles and miles of rock. Impossible to access without a huge expedition.
Huh. And what kept you from doing just that?
Well, 2 things. First of all, my attachment to my family. Secondly, Gilak.
Gileak?
My, partner.
You had a partner?
Yeah. We met... I'd rather not go into detail too much. Fact is, we lived together for 6 years. He was very dear to me. Let's put it that way.
What are dwarven families like?
Similar to their human counterparts, I believe. Having family and offspring is considered to be very important, especially if you're of noble blood.
But living with someone of the same sex is acceptable?
Well, yes and no. If you do, you don't talk about it, and you should make sure to find yourself a wife or a husband to found a proper family, eventually, and bring new children of stone into the world, even if that family is just a charade. If you don't do that, you're frowned upon. There's even a word for a childless dwarf, man or woman. Galrag, which roughly translates as dusty boulder. Very amusing, I know.
That's sad.
Well, I doubt it's going to change anytime soon. And once again, the Shapers were different in that regard. As long as you stay within the boundaries of your caste, you could do as you pleased.
I understand. But something happened, didn't it?
Yeah. The Blackstone Rebellion. Ever heard of it?
No.
A coup. A small group of rebels tried to overthrow the royal house. It was bound to fail from the beginning. The rebels were anti-traditionalist and wanted to establish a new order, where it's the people who have the power, not the nobility. Gilak was one of these rebels.
Oh.
Yeah. At first, before the coup, they tried to raise awareness by giving underground speeches. A noble endeavor, but not at all thought through. Most dwarves just don't care about politics as long as they can have their mugs of ale. At first, he didn't ask me to participate, but the more sour things went, the more he started pushing me. At one point, we had a fight, when he asked me to steal money from my family to support the movement. It was terrible. Finally, push came to shove, and he told me of the coup. He knew that despite my occupation, I was a remarkable fighter and Earthshaper, which is why he asked me to fight alongside him. You can make a difference, that's what he said. By Nihalf, he was just so naive. He really thought it would be like in the old legends, a group of courageous dwarfs fighting their way to Algrim Castle with me at his side. I just don't... Forgive me. It's strange to talk about it like this.
It's okay. Thank you for trusting me.
Yeah, sure. You can imagine how torn I was. I knew he'd die if the coup took place, but I also knew that I couldn't stop him. When I told him he was mad, he called me a coward, a delusional bookworm, who'd rather spend his whole life dreaming about the past and changing the present. And then he left. The next day, I found him beheaded by a royal guard. They didn't even make it to the castle stairs.
I'm sorry, Iskrim.
It's all right.
Why didn't you tell the guard about the movement's plans? They could have stopped him.
Yeah, they could have. Only to execute him and all his friends the next morrow. Tahar, believe me, I thought about this quite a lot. About what I could or should have done. And do you want to know the saddest part of it?
What?
I came to the conclusion that I did nothing wrong. He had his mind set, and nothing I could have said would have changed what had been about to happen. In the end, there's only so much you can do.
What happened then?
I ran. Not only because I'd rather have died than return to that empty house of ours, but also because they would have arrested me too. Our relationship wasn't a secret, and in their eyes, I was as eccentric as Gilak and his friends. And we all know how dangerous eccentrics are, don't we? I left my family a letter, telling them not to come after me, bought a horse, and rode as far as it would take me before collapsing. That was 9 years ago. I haven't returned ever since.
What about your family? Did you ever hear from them again?
Not directly. Every now and then, I return to a big city to find a dwarf who can tell me about Windwall. But the thought of returning, I don't know. I know it's cruel toward them, but I just don't think I could ever bear setting foot in those cursed stone halls again.
I see. And since then, you've been studying the Shapers?
Yeah. If there really is, as people say, a silver lining to everything, then this would be it. I'm finally doing what I was too afraid to do back in Windwall. I'm living my dream. Though the price I paid for it was high. And you know what, Tahar?
What?
There's a third reason to my fascination with the Shapers I haven't told you about yet. It's Gilak. Stupid as it may sound, there's a part of me who wants to prove him wrong. To show him that the past has value. That it can guide us towards a better world.
I see. Well, thank you for sharing this, Iskrim. I appreciate it.
Yeah. It felt good to talk about it. I didn't expect that. But you're not off the hook yet. The question, remember?
Right. Shoot.
Your past is even more unusual than mine. Growing up with a man like Isamu Tahar as your father? Without a mother? And then the whole thing with the Mage Rebellion? I know you've been through a lot. Now, I was wondering, if you could trade that past you've had for a different one, would you do it?
What kind of a past could I choose? Anything?
Anything.
Of course I would.
That's what I thought. Either way, pleasure speaking with you. Hope this wasn't too grim for you, but then again, you asked for it. Give me some time now, will you?
Sure. Take care, Iskrim. Will do.